Hello and welcome to Scoutcast Extra. Ahead of next week's regular Scoutcast, we thought we'd use the international break to take stock of the latest underlying statistics over the first 12 game weeks of the season. We'll look at goal threats, creativity, team defences, attacking defenders, bonus point magnets and much more. To join me to sift through the stats is David. David, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, no, but thanks. It's obviously things had a bit of a lull with the international break, but I know this might be an unpopular opinion, but I quite like that because that gives us the opportunity to, you know, sit back, look at some numbers, collect ourselves, and start planning for another chunk of games. And of course, the next chunk is going to be incredibly long, with Christmas in the mix as well. So being on top of all the stats is definitely very important.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like the break to take stock, but also it is infuriating with the number of international injuries.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And it's a bit depressing at the moment looking at a big sea of yellow players on my team. Some of which we will be discussing in the show. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, for those watching on the video version, we're going to put up some edited highlights of some of the tables that we're going to be looking at. For those who've yet to get membership, all of these are members tables from Fantasy Football Scout. If you've yet to get membership, do sign up. And those with membership, those full tables are available in the full members area. And I will flag them up as well in the article to go with this podcast and on Twitter too. So let's start with goal threats and players. So we'll look at teams as well, but first of all look at players. So we'll have a look at those that, and I've sorted this by, to be fair to those that perhaps have played 12 games, some have played 10 games, 8 games, just to assess how many chances in the box, shots they're getting in the box per minute. And the key thing to notice there is Aguero is absolutely streets ahead of everyone else. He scored 8 goals. He's pretty much on track. He should be scoring that amount of goals because he's getting loads and loads of close range efforts. That's good. What is slightly unusual is that some other big names, for example Harry Kane, are not quite as impressive as they once were. And there's a hell of a lot of cheap assets there. So David, I mean, looking at that table there, I mean, what immediately springs out with you as points of interest?
Yeah, I think the Aguero thing is the big one. I mean, I suppose I guess it's not really. I guess it's obvious in a way. I mean, Aguero's got this kind of pedigree, and there was a time when it was just if you hit, it was just first golden rule was just get Aguero, and I think it's great that that's kind of come back around because I think there's been some doubt over him, especially last couple of seasons, and whether or not he was sort of back to his best. And I think he is now. In a situation where he's nailed on to start every week. He might not necessarily finish every game, but what he's doing in those spells is just incredible. I mean, this is what's so crazy about this table, is that you look at how he's comparing, with all of these other players who scored a similar number of goals to him. Of course, he's ahead, but in the range of strikers that we want to be looking at, and yet, he's played fewer minutes than them. And yet he's performing better when he's actually on the pitch, and also what's also incredible is that I think only one away goal, which is frustrating, of course, but just how good he is at the Etihad just cannot be overlooked because these numbers are fantastic, but they've been recorded in limited minutes and largely only at home. So I mean, we always kind of talk about it, don't we, about this kind of rotation between Salah and Aguero and how that's worked out with the captaincy. Looking at their home games, as long as we're not seeing too much rotation from Man City, I think just Aguero's got to stay in that mix because he's just devastating at home but reliable as well. Explosive and reliable doesn't come around too often, and I think looking at those numbers, there's a lot more to come from Aguero yet.
Yeah, I mean Salah's doing well there as well. But one of the things you noted there is that captaincy success, and we've had this quite nice, handy in the most part home and away rotation. They're both much better at home than they are away, but that's sort of coming to an end soon. Man City's fixtures get a little bit more troublesome. I mean, for them, that's not particularly troublesome, but there's still, but there's not that nice home and away rotation with the captaincy there. So we perhaps need to be hoping that one or both perform better away, or look for elsewhere for the captaincy if we don't trust them away. Kane interests me as well. We had just in from Neil has just sent some stats in as well about Kane. Now, Kane being down there, see, that's okay where he is, but look where he is. He's kind of between Callum Wilson and Mitrovic. Kane of old should be at the top with Aguero. Him and Aguero should be right at the top there, having a chance in the box every 20 minutes, 22, 23 minutes, something like that. Neil says that Kane's minutes per chance and penalty box touches are down 46.2% and 16.9% respectively on last season. David, it sounds like Kane's knackered.
Yeah, I've been saying it for a long time. I just think he needs a rest, but I feel like he doesn't know that himself. Because it's weird, isn't it? Because Spurs, I think, are still technically having their best ever start to a Premier League season, and it kind of goes under the radar a little bit because everybody else seems to have done that as well. Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, etc. So from a team perspective for Spurs, it doesn't really make sense for him not to play because I don't really think that Llorente offers a massive amount. It's a tricky situation. I think as an individual, fantasy managers, we'd love for him to just have a break, like 3 or 4 weeks, where maybe he sort of, I don't know, features as a substitute. But that isn't going to happen. That's just not going to happen because he's a talisman. He's a captain. He's going to want to play. I think another factor, to be fair, I don't think it's just how much he's played. I think Spurs, their midfield has kind of been in flux in the last, sort of 6 weeks. We've had injuries for Eriksen. Dele Alli basically went something like 7 or 8 weeks without a first team start. He's sort of coming back in now. Son in and out, with going off to Asia and then coming back, and then Moura's come in and played this kind of advanced role, and Kane sat a little bit deep. So from a fantasy angle, even though Spurs are recording the results, everything's kind of just been a bit too much in flux for really to. There's been a lot of factors that have impinged on Kane, and it's frustrating because as you've just mentioned there, while we're looking at these stats on the first 12 weeks, we're going to take them and we're going to look ahead to the next big batch of games, and we all know that we're probably going to want a Spurs attacker from around game week 15, 16, something like that, and at the moment Kane just isn't really showing that he's worth 12.4. So we kind of still need to see some improvement from him, but it's just where that comes from.
Well, yeah, I did a little search of last 4 game weeks of the tables on the screen now, the minutes per goal attempt in the box, to hopefully see, because Kane has been in good scoring form. He got an assist as well at the weekend, and I was hoping to see him quite high up in that minutes per goal attempt in the box stats, and he's nowhere near it. Still, last 4. If Aguero's still there, trucking along, 23, goal in the box every 23 minutes. That's great. And Salah's still knocking around there with 35. So he's a bit down there. But the other players there, so some of the cheaper players are coming in. So on over the season, we've got Ings, Wilson, Arnautovic, Jimenez. They are offering good value. I guess Ings' issue really is Southampton really are not getting those chances to him, but he's still getting those goal attempts, but they're not those kind of cast iron chances that are going to result in a goal. So either he's firing it just wide or at the goalkeeper, and Southampton just don't seem to be gelling. But it's interesting that he's up there. But Rondon over the last 4 game weeks has suddenly joined that pack. So I think that shows that there's still a wealth of options at that price range. Out of all of these kind of cheaper players, these, I guess, third strikers, even second strikers, which do you think are the real deal ones worth keeping?
Yeah, I think the easy first choice for me is probably Arnautovic at the moment, because I think he is the only one that has, in my opinion, a smoking gun, in the sense that he's got form that we can back up with underlying statistics. It's not just goals that are coming out of nothing. He's had he's joint top for shots on target last 4 game weeks. He's had the same number in that period as Aguero. So we know he's got form, and he's also got the fixtures. Man City obviously is a tricky one in game week 13, but after that, continue to be depending on which site you're using. Newcastle away. Who, as we'll find out later on, they're giving up lots of chances. Then it's Cardiff at home. If you're not going to have a guy playing at home against Cardiff, the Cardiff is kind of one of those fixtures where everyone's going to target this year. Palace at home, Fulham away, Watford at home. So that's over the next 6 game weeks. He just has everything, and his price is still, in my opinion, it's budget. I reckon that come game week 18, he might be 7.5, possibly. At which point maybe people think twice. But that run for West Ham goes on for so long that for me, he's the one that you want to be having alongside Aguero.
Yeah, I agree. He's the one. I have slight concerns over some of the other ones, but not it's particularly Wilson really. I mean, looking at his stats, arguably he's overperforming. So this season he's had 6 goals, which is great. But that comes from shots on target, 13. So half of all his shots on target are actually resulting in a goal. So I don't know whether that's it, because that's similar to Aguero, but Aguero's got so many more shots in there. It just feels like if just 13 of those shots are on target, that doesn't seem like a lot to me when you compare, say, for example, Aguero with 19 shots on target, and Salah with 19 shots on target as well. But I mean, it's probably just being picky there. I think he's obviously good value. Looking in there, I did have a look actually as well at kind of under and over performers. So this is looking at some XG data. I haven't put this up on the screen, so this is for members can have a look at this in detail. But here's some of the findings really. So those in terms of who are kind of overperforming in terms of what the stats say they should be getting. And it's Martial has been amazing overperformer. Hazard as well actually shouldn't be scoring as much as he had from his shots. With all of these, you have to look at it 2 ways. One is they're overperforming and they're going to regress. Or 2, it's just they're phenomenally accurate, and which is the case, say, for example, Jamie Vardy in the amazing Premier League winning season for Leicester as well. Richarlison's right up there. He should not be scoring the amount of goals he is for these chances there. And Aubameyang is up there as well, and Özil. So these are just some of those names. And the underperformers, well, I mentioned Vardy. Vardy is underperforming. He is actually getting those amount of shots away. He just can't put them away. Pogba is another. And and Ings really should be scoring much more than his 4 goals. And as we can see, with 30.6, a goal attempt in the box every 30.6, that does indicate more as well. I mean, what are your thoughts on kind of over and under performers this season so far in terms of goal threat?
Yeah, it's always really tricky to. I think game week 12 is around the sort of time when you can start to work out who has form that's sustainable, because you've mentioned some names in there. Vardy never really looked like he wasn't one of these players that was taking shots all the time. It was a case of when he shoots, he scores, and it takes some time for you to realise that there are players out there like that, because I can remember Lucas Moura earlier on in the season. I think within the first sort of 4 or 5 game weeks, he had 3 goals. So then instantly everyone kind of lumps on him because he's the kind of player that 3 goals in 3 or 4 games, and people like the look of that. But they were basically coming from pretty much all of those goals were his only shots on target, and that eventually regresses. So it's always a tricky one, because I think you have to be quite patient with it. And already some of those names you've listed off. I mean, Hazard, overperforming, but he's going nowhere for me, because I like Chelsea's the way they're playing this year. Hazard seems to be kind of back to his best. So I mean, I guess it just comes down to, I don't know. It's part of it's a gut call, I suppose, about what you think about a certain player. So Martial, I haven't been looking at, because I can't really get behind the whole. I can't imagine that he's going to keep this up, because it's Martial in a Man United team that are unreliable. I guess maybe with those sorts of players, you have to kind of apply some external factors of maybe more mental side of the game, which is difficult to do. Yeah,
this is where a couple of things that have arisen from the Meet the Manager videos that we do, where we interview those with an amazing career history in FPL. And the eye test is absolutely key. So that is where you can look at a player and think, okay, they just are really accurate. They're absolutely lethal, and you watch those games and you can see that. Or is it that the shot's a bit weak? It's just always at the goalkeeper. They're just not. They're getting them on target, but not really on target, not really accurate. And you can tell that from the eye test and history as well. So, for example, Lacazette, if he scores from every shot he takes, that doesn't bother me, because he has a track record of doing that as well. So that's why he doesn't bother me with that. Whereas I might be a bit more concerned if that applied to, say, for example, Richarlison. Who's doing that, who doesn't necessarily have a track record of scoring from every shot. That kind of actually needs quite a lot of shots.
Certainly didn't last year.
No, that's his history, you see. So I mean, I might be wrong being put off there, but I think that's where you start to have to do a bit of research, and then, as you said, make that gut call. So, well, let's have a look at team attack. Okay, so no surprises here. We've got Man City at the top. People are just going to say, yeah, tell us something we don't know. But it's some of the other things, I think, in this this table that are much more interesting. So City and Chelsea, pretty much, I think, are a league of their own when it comes to shots. So that could indicate that people need to be prioritising perhaps Chelsea attackers over Liverpool attackers. Those with Salah and Mane, maybe you should be looking elsewhere, maybe making sure you have Hazard and Alonso, for example, as well. Now, Liverpool as well are interesting. They're quite way down there. I think they should be higher. I think they should be taking more shots. I mean, 23 goals is okay. It's not to Man City's level as well. Wolves doing really well there. If you compare, they're almost up to Liverpool in terms of shots, but they've scored much less. So that either indicates they're not as accurate as the Liverpool attackers, or they've got certainly room to score many more goals, and perhaps they've been unlucky. These are the kinds of things you can look at here in the stats as well. And Tottenham there and Bournemouth, I think have been overperforming. Tottenham have not had a lot of shots, and Bournemouth in comparison to, say, Chelsea and Man City. But that's just me looking at it. What's your take from that in terms of kind of team attack?
Yeah, I definitely completely agree. Chelsea and Man City, they're definitely the best teams to look at for attacking threat. I mean, in fact, interestingly enough, anyone who read the Captain Sensible article for Game Week 12 would have seen that in the 4 game weeks building up to Game Week 12, Chelsea were actually ahead of Man City for big chances, shots inside the box, and shots on target as well, which kind of just goes to show you the level that they're playing at. Yeah. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about Hazard, is that he is in a team that is attacking in a way that's comparable with Man City. So if that's the case, then because we're always, it's always been the age-old debate of under Pep at Man City is, which Man City players do you get in because they always score lots of goals. In a way, we should be looking at that for Chelsea. Of course, they have scored fewer, but the underlying statistics suggest that a 4 or 5-0 is always around the corner for them because of the way that they play.
Yeah.
Liverpool is Liverpool's a frustrating one because we know that they're capable of it, and yet it's not there anymore in quite the same way. They should be up there with Chelsea and Man City with the players they've got and the way they played last year. But I still come back to this idea that I think Klopp has matured a bit this year. And, because we all remember that some of the drubbings they had at the hands of the other big teams last year because they played with that high press that kind of left them a bit exhausted towards the end of games, but also, their defensive players weren't always in the right place. Thinking of people like Moreno here. Whereas now he's got a more organised defence, and I think it's kind of almost a more control. It's more about control for Liverpool than it is for devastating counter-attack, and that's had its impact on fantasy as well. Yeah. So that's a bit of a shift. That's that especially when we're kind of really weighing up which premium options we're going to be having over there. You're thinking about selling Salah, for example. I might do the same. All of these kind of comparing these high-level teams. And actually seeing that Liverpool don't really compare attacking-wise to Man City and Chelsea is really, really useful to know.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And one of the other interesting things is when you look at the home and away. So when you get this table and you switch it to just away fixtures as well. And quite the shocking thing really is that City go from absolute top for all fixtures that really rely on their home form because they go down to 7th place in this list when it comes to away games. They've scored 9 on the road. Others have scored much more. And so, for example, Tottenham are top for goal attempts, in fact, in this list here. Chelsea, again, are still up there. So Chelsea are really reliable home and away. I like that. I like the sound of that. Tottenham are much better away than they are at home or overall as well. And Wolves actually move up as well. So you have to look at that as well. Now, there's 2 ways of looking at that. Man City have had some tough away games. Do Man City ever have tough games? Well, they've certainly had tougher than at home as well. But if you are of the mindset that thinks that Man City play less attacking away from home, the likes of Aguero less attacking, that is interesting because their next fixtures coming up, they have West Ham away, Bournemouth at home. That's fantastic. But then Watford away and then Chelsea away. And then they have a nice couple of home fixtures, Everton and Palace. So over the next 4, they've only got 1 home game as well. So arguably, there is a case possibly for ditching Aguero for a little while and then bringing him back again in 4 weeks' time. If you only think you're going to get one good set of returns, just throwing that out there. But I mean, what are your thoughts on this whole kind of home and away thing, and particularly City? They're particularly susceptible to this home and away thing.
Well, I think just coming back to sort of the discussion about when we have a particularly attacking team, I think you have to look at home and away, because if you're going to invest in a premium asset, you want to not really worry about the venue. And I think with Aguero you do. It's just we've been lucky. Well, not necessarily lucky, but we're in a situation where we can cope with Aguero away from home, because normally that week someone else is at home, like Salah or Hazard, that we can trust. It's definitely got to be factored in. And you're right. I mean, it's hard to know whether or not, you've mentioned some factors there. It's hard to know which one is the reason why they're not so devastating away from home. But it's definitely got to be a part of it, because Chelsea, as you say, more reliable, home and away. So then, you're thinking that you're going to want to hold on to your Hazard. Maybe you're going to want to hold on to someone like Willian, who's actually been doing quite well. Perhaps a double up of Hazard and Willian theoretically does better than a double up of Aguero and maybe even Sterling. And you just think about the money that saves you to invest that elsewhere. Chelsea looked like the team that I'd love to triple up on Chelsea if I could. The form that Morata's in as well. I mean, I don't know how long it'll last, but I feel that there's a more viable triple up at Chelsea than there would be at Man City, because obviously rotation comes into it. And of course, the home and away thing is a big part of it as well.
Well, there's certainly more affordable ones. I mean, that's a good segue into looking at creativity. So we're going to look at assist potential next. So these are the players that have created the most chances. I mean, Silva is up there. He's looking like really good value there. He's actually underperforming in terms of his assists, because a lot of his points this season actually come from goals. So I think, judging by his history and the eye test, I think there's actually more assists to come from him. Willian there, that's a player you mentioned there. Oh, if he was nailed on Willian and Hazard, that would be a really great combination there, because he's actually creating more chances than his teammate Hazard. And a player I really like, Sigurdsson, and I think Sigurdsson's been doing well here. Now, Neil has just sent in as well a modern version of a telegram called an email to us, telling us about Sigurdsson. So Sigurdsson's minutes per chance and chance created have improved by 50.5% and 58.1% over last season. He is doing really well this season as well. Richarlison, his teammate, his minutes per chance are actually down by 20.2% on last season. And Sterling's minutes per chance he adds are down by 6.8%. So what about these creative chaps here? I mean, you've mentioned Willian and Hazard. Oh, if only Willian was nailed on. But any other names there, or any other thoughts that spring out around this?
Yeah, I think the Sigurdsson-Richarlison debate has been going on for several weeks, and I think it will continue to go on, because Sigurdsson, I say on paper, I mean looking at the figures, he looks like the clear winner, because he just seems to be offering everything this year. Because the creativity is obviously doing fantastic, but he's doing really, really well for shots as well. Over the sort of the last 6 game weeks, he's been, in terms of the total shots, in similar area as Aguero and a lot of the other premium forwards that we normally trust. But his price is perhaps just a little bit too much, because a lot of people, their third and fourth midfielders this year have kind of been maybe under 7 million, or especially with Richarlison offering a cheaper price and that forward role, which he seems to be kind of adapting to now. I think that'll go on. But I mean, I'd love to have Sigurdsson. Yeah, completely agree. If Willian was nailed on, I think he'd be in a lot more teams. But I think we're quite lucky this year, because looking at this list and the creative players, a lot of them have goals as well, and it's not. It means that there's pressure on people like Maddison, or even maybe Fraser, because Fraser and Maddison have been great for chances created this year. They haven't quite delivered as many assists as we'd like. Some people have been suggesting that Maddison is the new Tadic. I think that's a bit early. But we kind of almost like the dullard players, you could say. The guys you just leave in there because they take the set pieces and they'll keep ticking over. When there's so many options like Willian, Silva, obviously Hazard, a lot of people have Sigurdsson. I mean, even Bernardo Silva on this list as well, who we know can do both. They're all action midfield players that take the set pieces, they play the through balls, they get in attacking positions, they score goals themselves. That's where the real opportunity is the people who can do both. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks how many of these guys sort of, in terms of their appeal and their ownership, overtakes the likes of, Fraser. And obviously Maddison's had this injury, but there's more opportunity now to get multiple avenues of points in midfield, I think.
And also in attack as well. There's three names there: Aguero, Wilson, Jimenez. Now they all feature highly in terms of goal threat as well. So they're offering that combination now, particularly for Wilson and Jimenez. That's really exceptional value. And Aguero there is showing his value there. He's there was one of the recent games he played in at the Etihad. He gets more assists than actual goals, which is. It's really nice. That's what you want from an attacking player. You want to rack up those points. You want to see the little box at the end of their game week that says goals, assists, bonus. You want everything in there as well. And Aguero, Wilson, and Jimenez are kind of offering that at the moment, as is Salah as well and Hazard. I like them. So let's have a look really at the teams that we hope that this lot come up against, really. So we're going to look at worst defences next. Here we go. Burnley in an absolute class of their own due to their lack of class. But they haven't actually conceded the most goals as well. And one of the things that I find really interesting in this is that Fulham should actually be conceding much less than they have been. Their goal attempts conceded and the goals conceded don't quite match up, and Burnley should be conceding a hell of a lot more. So that implies, I don't know whether this implies perhaps a goalkeeper issue, and I speculated, I think it was on the last Scoutcast, if Burnley had Fulham's keeper, you want to be targeting players against them every time. And if Hart was with Fulham, well, arguably, perhaps Fulham wouldn't have been conceding so much there. But I think I don't think a real whipping boy is emerging yet, because Burnley, it could be Burnley, but I don't know. You saw the game, the Liverpool game against Fulham. Did you think that may be a sign to come with Fulham? Because the stats suggest they really shouldn't be conceding 31 goals.
Yeah, I was really perplexed because obviously when I did the Captain Sensible article, I was thinking, this would be easy.
Yeah,
this would be really easy to do. I'll just go to Liverpool and they're not scoring many chances. Well, that's okay because Fulham are giving them up everywhere. And I go, over the last 4 game weeks, I think something like 7 teams had allowed more big chances. It's hard to put a finger on it because it could be a goalkeeper issue. I thought maybe I'd seen a few defensive errors in my opinion. Went through the stats. Apparently, they've only had 2 this year. Maybe the thing with their goalkeeper situation, I think 3 different goalies have played for them now. You've had Sergio Rico, Marcus Bettinelli, and can't remember. Was it Fabry in the first couple of weeks? And there seems to be something a bit unsettled there because I think Bettinelli, obviously, despite anyone who just has heard his name and knows nothing about him, he is in actual fact English and not Italian. So he speaks English fine. But these 2 other goalies that came in, I think they didn't speak English very well, and there was some communication error, something to do with the coaching staff with the goalkeepers, and the goalkeeper situation just seems to be a mess. Yeah, and maybe that's what it is. I mean, there's no team the delta for Fulham in terms of the difference between their expected goals conceded and the amount of goals they conceded. They've conceded something like plus 7.8 more goals than they should have done. It's massive. No one even comes close to having a similar size of.
I mean, that's it. It's not to say their goalkeepers are bad. It's just that communication between the defence and the goalkeepers.
It's so disorganised, isn't it?
It's just completely atrocious.
Yeah, I think organisation is a big part of it. I mean, anyone who's watched Match of the Day recently will have seen the analysis. It's easy to do. Even Match of the Day in the short spell that they have can highlight that it's just for every goal they concede, their back forward seems to be in the wrong place. There was I think it was the Bournemouth game where Ryan Fraser went through on the left, played the ball out to Brooks, and they did a freeze frame. As the moment of Brooks is putting the ball into the net, they highlighted where all the back four was, and it was something like, Cyrus Christie was just in the centre circle, Tim Ream was on the left wing, and Odoi was just on the edge of the box because their shape seems to be all over the place. And it'll be interesting to see because obviously, as we've seen, they're not actually conceding as many shots as we expected based on the goals they conceded.
If
they can get some shape. Yeah, I mean, if they can get some shape, maybe that changes. I don't know. But at the moment, in terms of if we're going to pick a whipping boy, I think Burnley are there. I think Burnley are a team that we can already class as one, because we've seen so many teams have their best performances, or have lots of players have done very, very well against Burnley and then not so well against others. A few examples of that, throughout the season. So I mean, things may change there as well. I rate Sean Dyche as a manager, so that might change. Yeah. But it's the sheer number of chances that Burnley are giving up. If you've got anyone in your team who has been doing well for shots this year, then I think then they're a captain candidate, because they're going to get the opportunity to do what they're good at.
This is why I've got Joe Hart in my team, and one of the reasons I'm keeping him actually is because of this, because he's getting those save points like Fabianski with West Ham. I mean, we saw this week Joe Hart got 10-point return. So he got that clean sheet. He also gets the bonus as well, and he's racking up the saves as well, because they're conceding so many chances. So yeah, the Fulham as well, Cardiff as well. I'd probably lump in a bit with Fulham. I mean, they're even more unlucky. I mean, I'm known on the Scoutcast to have a pop at Cardiff, but probably unfairly. 155 goal attempts conceded. Well, that's less than Bournemouth there, and then but Bournemouth conceded 16 and Cardiff 25. Other point of interest, Arsenal, basically what you're looking at here is relegation candidates and teams that have either been unlucky and just need to tighten up and stuff. You do not expect to see a so-called top six contender and Arsenal in there. What do you think of the Arsenal defence? It's bad to see them there, because they've got some good options.
Yeah, Arsenal defenders, don't talk to me about them. I can't even. I can't conceive any possibility of me signing any of their defenders anytime soon. Bellerin obviously has some goal threat, but over 5 million with virtually no clean sheet potential. When you've got like Doherty at Wolves, you've got some Newcastle options are looking nice right now. I mean, obviously they're conceding a lot of shots, but they are keeping clean sheets. And of course when you've got your big ram, as everyone's calling it, Robertson, Alonso, and Mendy, there's just really not room to get an Arsenal defender who's probably going to be, in your mid-price, possibly, top end of that, when there's no clean sheet potential. I mean, Rob Holding is a great price, 4.4. I love that. We have to see if he plays some more games, of course. But yeah, I mean, I think Arsenal have conceded more big chances at home than anyone else, which perhaps maybe suggests that, they're very attacking. I mean, I think they'll do well. They seem like a we'll score one more than you kind of team, which is great for their fans, because they've really missed something quite like that. I'm not going anywhere near their defenders right now.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Bellerin's a player I've always got my eye on, but the lack of clean sheets, because that's the bread and butter really. So let's have a look at
both, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, let's have a look at best defences now. So once again, no surprise there. Man City at the top there for shots. They're at the bottom for shots, because best in terms of conceding less shots. They've only conceded 5 goals as well, so that plays out there. And Liverpool as well, pretty low down. They're the second best in terms of conceding shots. And then Chelsea, which is great news for Ram fans, those who have Robertson, Alonso and Mendy. It just plays out there. You've got players there that should be getting clean sheets. They are getting clean sheets as well. But there's some of the other teams there that interest me a little bit more. Watford should be conceding far less than they have. They're doing really well in terms of keeping shots out of their penalty area, and so too Everton. And now this particularly interests me, because Everton's recent defensive displays show that they could have some real options there. Lucas Digne at fullback as well, and you've got Keane as well, who's up who's less than 5 million as a centre back, also showing some goal threat as well. And their next fixtures: Cardiff at home, then Liverpool away, then Newcastle at home, and Watford away. 3 very good, I would say, even though Watford are on here, but they've been conceding 14 goals, as we can see there. So 3 out of 4 really good fixtures there. This is what this table screams out to me. Everton defender, please. What's your thoughts on anything else that springs out on this table?
Yeah, I've been wanting Lucas Digne for maybe 4 or 5 weeks now. It's just I've never had the opportunity to do it. I've always had something else I want to do, because their home fixtures they look really nice, and defensively they are improving. I mean, I remember slating them, or rather slating Silva at the beginning of the season for his defensive record in the Premier League, which is terrible. It's something like 100 goals conceded in 50 games or something in English management. That's what it was, prior to the season. But yeah, they've been shown. But kind of going back to what we were saying about Arsenal defenders, where yes, maybe there's some attacking threat for someone like Bellerin, but there's no clean sheet potential. We're starting to get a situation now where Everton defenders, the two you just mentioned there, I really like the look of because their price is great and they offer both, attacking potential and defensive potential. I mean, Keane, before he had his head injury, maybe 6 weeks into the season, he was top for goal attempts out of defenders, and he's still performing well. Obviously, having missed a few weeks because of that head injury, he's still performing well there. Obviously, Dean, as I've just mentioned, and you've mentioned as well, he's really advanced sort of player. His average position, and anyone who sort of has a look in the members area, is effectively like a second left winger, if anything. He's offering a lot from that flank. Whereas Watford, Holobas, I like the look of in terms of what he offers offensively, but Watford just can't seem to keep the clean sheets, and I don't know exactly what the reason for that is. I mean, sometimes when I look at teams who aren't conceding many chances but are conceding more goals than they should, there's two ways of looking at it. You either say they're unfortunate, or you say that they're disorganised, perhaps, or that they're they have momentary lapses in concentration, and that's kind of the impression I get from Watford. So I don't. And of course, their fixtures are horrible over the next couple of weeks because their home games are, next two home games are Liverpool, Man City, and the next two away games are Leicester and Everton. Whereas, Everton, very nice home games. What I like here is obviously is Wolves. Anyone who's sort of followed what I've been doing this year will know I love the Wolves guys, and their fixtures are turning back to what looks really nice now. And the really interesting thing I find about Wolves is they seem to be better defensively away from home. There was a time when they were basically the best defensive team away from home. That's changed now because obviously the defeats that they've had over the last couple of games. But there was a time when about 10 game weeks in, they'd conceded fewer big chances away from home than Man City, and that's just incredible for a newly promoted team. And if we're talking about organisation, that I don't see at Watford, I see that very evident at Wolves, which is weird for a 3-4-3. That's what that whole team is just an enigma to me. It's just. They break so many molds because with a 3-4-3 team with attacking fullbacks, you'd think they'd give up loads of chances, but it's really, really organised. And with the fixtures coming up, I think you've got to be. If you don't have them already, get them in now.
I mean, they've surprised me. I'm going to admit, as a promoted side, promoted sides often struggle, and they just seem ready-made. They just seem to be a ready-made mid-table Premier League side that can have some outside ambition of a European place and doesn't look anywhere near the relegation zone. And I haven't been able to say that about a promoted side for absolutely ages. Now, Wolves, this is a good segue into attacking defenders here because Alonso is top. That would surprise no one. Doherty is second. Probably won't surprise followers of Fantasy Football Scout as well. But he is looking still exceptional value there. 19 goal attempts Wolves' Doherty has had, and he's right up there as well. Keane just behind him in terms of goal attempts from Everton. Another point of interest there. And Rudiger as well for Chelsea. Makes you think maybe a Chelsea double up there with Rudiger offering 15 goal attempts this season. And we know, because we've seen the stats earlier, they can get clean sheets as well. I mean, what's your thought on these kind of points potential at both ends of the pitch players?
Part of it, I think, is down to just the natural evolution of the way that football is kind of changed over the last 10 years. Every year we seem to have more and more attacking style defenders, especially in the fullbacks, obviously. But, I also think set pieces are sort of coming back in vogue. I don't really think they necessarily ever left. English football's always been built around them, but especially after the World Cup and seeing England get so much success from set pieces, I think, because what we're seeing here is we're seeing a lot of centre-backs who offer some great attacking threat and are getting goals on a fairly regular basis. So Keane, obviously more of his goals towards it and assists for involved in a situation at the beginning of the season. But Rudiger, obviously most notably in that game against Man United. Balbuena is another one, and obviously we saw Sol Bamba, who definitely didn't take his shirt off, by the way. Do the same against Brighton the other day. There's a lot more value in defence, I think, this year than we've seen in recent years, because it's just clean sheets, lots of teams can offer those, and as we can see here, there's lots of attacking threat. And I just think it's a fantasy football manager's dream whenever you can ever find players like this, who can offer both clean sheets and attacking potential.
And
we're just so blessed that there's so many in one season.
I mean, in the old days, we had Ryan Shawcross for Stoke, Graham Alexander at Burnley, penalty taking, the Stuart Pearce of the North. Fantastic players to have. And we've got a few of these types of players now. Alonso, Doherty, really the standout there, goal attempts. If we have a look at chances created as well, that throws up some similar names as well. Alonso is there, and Doherty is still there. So not only are they offering clean sheet potential, not only are they offering goal potential, they're offering assist potential too. That makes Alonso and Doherty now, I mean, I did question Alonso a few weeks back, but I think say the word essential, I think they're as near as you can get to defensive essential status because of the spread of points, and also they've got good fixtures as well. They've got everything. But if you look at chances created, Holebas is top for that. I still think he's a good option. We saw at the weekend he is as well. Digne is second. So Holebas has created 21 chances, top for defenders, and Digne at Everton 20. This is why I like him a lot. Below 5 million. Please don't anyone buy him before. I don't want his price to go up. But he's above Trippier with 19 as well. And then you've got Alonso, and then you've got Robertson there. So what is interesting for those who follow the Ram school of thought in their defence is that Robertson is offering assist potential still. Alonso is offering goal and assist potential. But at the top of these tables, we have yet to mention Benjamin Mendy. Let's have a look at bonus magnets next and see if Mendy is there. Well, he is. So Benjamin Mendy is there. So Benjamin Mendy is actually offering something that's extra apart from clean sheets. He's offering some bonus potential. So people need to weigh up, really. Is he offering... But Robertson's there as well. So Robertson's also offering that as well. So if people are thinking of ditching one, at the moment, I would say Mendy might be the one to be ditched if you were minded to ditch one of them as well. But also what we're looking at is minutes per baseline bonus. And for those that don't know, baseline bonus is when you strip out things like clean sheets, assists and goals, and you're just left with the basics of what they do: dribbling, tackling, interceptions, those types of things. So you tend to see very good passing, tackling midfielders there. You see defenders who are very solid at intercepting balls and passes, those types of things as well. And that's why you see players like, say, Fulham's Seri is actually a bit of a bonus magnet if Fulham could ever do anything to achieve bonus points. But if he ever scored or assists, he's got the rest of the underlying stats to suggest he could get a bonus. But players that we are actually interested in, Silva. By the way, I'm only looking at outfield players for this as well. I just wanted to mention that for goalkeepers, Hart, Lloris, Etheridge and Fabianski are the top ones, and they are really good goalkeeper bonus magnets. But just for the purpose of this, I just thought it'd be good to look at outfield players here. So what's your thought on these bonus magnets here as well? Particularly David Silva at the top there.
Yeah, I think kind of harking back to what we were saying about his creativity, I think, there's definitely a lot more to come from him. And when it does come, it will be almost certainly with some bonus, because that's the way he plays. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, the passes, and he's an engine room for that Man City team. Vertonghen, Stones and Sanchez are all sort of interesting ones if we're sort of thinking about Spurs. Obviously, the interesting thing with Spurs is that this new youngster, Juan Foyth, I think you pronounce his name, is come into the mix and maybe put a couple of these Spurs guys, maybe not as nailed on as before. Same with Stones as well. So it's a bit frustrating because there isn't really anyone who offers that this year. But maybe we don't necessarily need that, because we've got such a spread of options for just pure attacking potential. I mean, I remember I had Otamendi last year because he was that guy who was picking up bonus all the time, because he was the guy making the passes in that team, and the baseline bonus points he was getting from making passes. He finished the season something, he was very, very far ahead of, I think second place was Azpilicueta, and that just made him a really great addition, because it meant whenever City kept a clean sheet, even if they won 2 or 3-0, he was putting himself in a situation to maybe get some bonus. With some more goal scoring defenders this year, maybe those defenders aren't quite there. But it's interesting to note that Benjamin Mendy's in this list, because there's been a few games this season where he's got some bonus when he hasn't done a great deal. There was the Wolves game, I think he wasn't involved in a goal. He didn't get a clean sheet, and he came out with 4 points. He got 2 bonus points, despite there being another defender in the game getting a goal. That was Bolly, who famously was on your bench that week. I think it was Laporte got the goal for Man City. So despite two other defenders getting involved in attacking returns, he still got bonus in a game where he didn't keep a clean sheet. So I think that's probably going to be his primary appeal. But you're right. I mean, I think compared to Robertson and Alonso, it's a bit. Does it justify the extra spend?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the question.
I mean, that's what I'm starting to look at here. Is you're looking at these tables, each one, all these different assets of getting points, all these different criteria, and you're looking for names that crop up time and again. We've seen Doherty time and again. We've seen Alonso time and again, and we're now seeing David Silva. He's a bonus magnet. He is well, for him, he's a goal machine at the moment by his reckoning. But also, his assist potential. He's actually not fulfilling his assist potential. There's more to come, I think. And all of that for a Man City attacker who's less than 9 million, I think that makes him really interesting. Let's have a look at our final kind of table to look at is Talisman. So this is really looking at goal involvement. So these are the players that are most involved in their side's teams when they're on the pitch. Danny Ings is top. 71% of Southampton goals come through him. That says more about Southampton than Danny Ings, arguably. Fulham as well, Mitrovic, you would expect that there. Murray at Brighton, high up. Arnautovic at West Ham. So you're starting to get into players we might be considering as well. So Arnautovic as well. We see Callum Wilson's potential, near just under half of all goals at Bournemouth has come through him. And then you've got Raheem Sterling at 44% goal involvement, which is just above Aguero at 40%. So that brings us to that debate about Sterling or Aguero, and probably a similar thing that we mentioned on a previous Scoutcast. Have one, definitely. But which one? I don't think it matters too much. They're both good. They're both appearing in some of our tables there. And Richarlison on 43%. He's just edging. Sigurdsson's actually on 39% goal involvement there. So Richarlison is actually the talisman at the moment. Is not Sigurdsson as well. And Salah, obviously, there 43% goal involvement. All familiar names. All players I kind of like in some ways. All players I either had or probably will have at some point in my team. I've got Danny Ings. Even Glenn Murray appeals, I think, in a good run of fixtures for Brighton. And Mitrovic, is quite sad what's happening to Fulham, really. They shouldn't really be where they are. Mitrovic should be scoring more and they should be conceding less. But, I mean, what's your thoughts about Talisman? Do you like to target the Talisman?
First and foremost, the thing with Talisman is that... they're normally, but if it's kind of almost like a personality thing with a lot of these cases. They're big personalities that like to be involved in everything, and that then translates into starts. It's kind of a basic rule of fantasy Premier League generally, is that you want your player to start, but that means that you can always be sure they're going to play. You can always be sure that the team is going to try and play through them. I mean, with some of these figures, we're able to start identifying those several weeks into the season. Ings is one that actually kind of surprises me a little bit because, I thought that maybe Charlie Austin might be kind of number one there, but that hasn't quite translated. And of course, but then what you then have to do is, as you've just kind of done there, is kind of put some mitigating circumstances on it. So 71% of Southampton goals isn't as impressive as it perhaps sounds because they haven't scored too many goals. Mitrovic, kind of again, because over the last couple of game weeks they haven't really offered very much going forward. Glenn Murray is one that I've seen a lot of people be interested in, but the factor I would put onto Brighton is that actually they don't do very well away from home, and so while Glenn Murray is the talisman, he tends to only really be that talisman at home. He's basically only one of his goals has come away from home this season. That was from the penalty spot against Southampton, so he's not scored from open play away. So I wouldn't look at that. Whereas Arnautovic, who's someone that we've already sort of talked up on this episode, he's doing it home and away. Callum Wilson's doing it home and away. And I think sometimes when we look at accuracy sometimes, don't we? And we say if someone's accuracy is really, really high over a select period, we go, well, that's probably going to change over time. I actually think that a player who looks more likely to be heavily involved in a team that's scoring lots of goals and is doing well every week, I want to be looking at someone who's maybe in the Arnautovic range, between 40 and 50%, because that tells me that there are other people in that team that can shoulder the responsibility if they need to, because they're a more attacking team. So, Brighton, Fulham and Southampton to me don't appeal for the reasons I've mentioned. Whereas, West Ham, Bournemouth, Man City, Liverpool, they're all teams that I'd love to have attackers from because they're just a more attacking team.
Okay. Let's just, round up really all that we've been looking at. Whole variety of tables there, whole variety of criteria. Just looking for ways in which it may have changed your mind or cemented particular views. So here's mine first, and we'll go to yours. So for me, when it comes to my Robertson, Alonso, Mendy, I'm even more keen on Robertson and Alonso than I was before. I'm less keen on Mendy now. He's not offering that assist and goal potential that I kind of want from him. And I'm not sure the bonus on its own is enough, especially when Ederson is making mistakes where they're conceding the odd goal. Because they can when they're like 3-0 up or 5-0 up or whatever. Digne at Everton. In fact, Everton in general. Sigurdsson, I'm even more keen on him. I'm even more keen on Everton defender. I would have to get a hit to get Richarlison in for the next game week. I might not. I might just get Digne in instead and hope that Digne can match Richarlison, because I don't think many people will have Digne as well as Richarlison. They may well. So that's a thought that hadn't occurred to me really until this as well. I think Salah may be a keeper. I kind of thought that as well with the Fulham game. He is up there knocking around. He's the only Liverpool attacker doing it. If Mane was right up there with him in all of these metrics that we had, it's a no-brainer for me to switch to Mane. But I can't see that really. I don't see an alternative Liverpool attacker. So I also get the feeling there's more to come from Salah as well. I think he's been underperforming. David Silva as well is definitely a target. I'm now thinking I would like Raheem Sterling, but I think Aguero and Raheem Sterling might be pushing it. If I didn't get Sterling, I think I might want David Silva. I think he's offering quite a lot, and I think I can stomach the odd game being missed, and it really would be the odd game because while KDB is out, I think he's there as well. So that's my general thoughts just from looking at these stats. How about you? What's your general thinking? 12 game weeks in, looking at these stats.
Yeah, no, I agree with you about Ram. I think the most at risk is Mendy. If I'm going to move one on, we've seen obviously in there Stone's doing quite well for bonus, so maybe he's one to look at because he offers you a bit more money than if you downgrade to Laporte, who isn't really doing as well for bonus as we perhaps had hoped. But yeah, bringing it back round to Salah, the Mane has been, I think, conspicuous by his absence from this video. We've looked at lots of high-performing assets over the season in midfield, and people are offering creativity and goal threat, and he's not really offering either. I mean, he's obviously got some goals, but he has regressed from that early season form. There's no doubt about that. He is not an alternative to Salah, I don't think, and going into more detail as we did with Man City and Chelsea's attacking play, showing that they seem to be the teams that are going to roll out 3 or 4 nils more often. If Willian can get a place in the team, then maybe he as in regularly, then maybe he comes in as an alternative. I think if we're looking at to double up on any of these high powered attacks, we shouldn't be doing it on Liverpool. I mean, obviously, I did it for the Fulham game, but that's because it was Fulham. I'm not going to, for example, I'm not going to keep Shaqiri past next week, probably, depending on what else happens in my squad. But, Willian, possibly, I know he's not started too many games in the last 2 weeks, but, Barkley as well. If we can start to see some cheaper options emerge at Chelsea, then we could look there. Morata's looked nice as well. With Man City, I think you're right on David Silva. If we want to be doubling up on them, then he seems to be the one to go for if we need room in our squads. Because as you say, I think Sterling and Aguero is overkill in spending, I think, when they kind of offer the same thing. And David Silva's more assured of starts than both of them, I think. So, lots to consider, definitely. Because 12 game weeks in, it's always good just to kind of take stock of what's gone on before and how that might affect what's going to happen in the next 12 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's been a useful exercise for both of us there. It's kind of cemented some of our views, but also offered up some different players that I hadn't really quite considered before. So I hope it's as useful as for others as we found it. But for now, it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye all.